Hi, everybody. This is March 11th, 2025, and I've been posting these videos as part of a therapeutic journal to recover from watching my little brother, Paul Kierans, 64, with Down syndrome, be locked up by the BC New Democratic Party government. That's David Eby, Premier, and Nikki Sharma was the Attorney General, who presided over Paul's isolation and confinement. So Paul was locked up with no visits from me, his last surviving family member from a big family in Greater Vancouver. He was locked up in his group home, and then he had some kind of brain incident on April 13th of 2024. He went to Burnaby General, and I was told 2 days later the BC government, the BC New Democratic Party government, appointed my 82-year-old Catholic nun sister 4,000 kilometers away in Ontario as Paul's guardian and substitute decision maker to give him the COVID-19 shot. And on August 26th of 2022, when I complained to the Burnaby RCMP about the fraudulent forged power of attorney they used to appoint the nun Paul's guardian, they terminated permanently my visits with him. I got a letter from the group home. The group home was L'Arche, L''ARCHE. That's a Catholic organization, or it's not actually Catholic. It's pseudo-Catholic organization created by Jean Vanier, who was a retired Canadian naval officer, and Thomas Philippe, a French defrocked, excommunicated Catholic priest. They pretended to care about incapable adults and formed group homes for them around the world, and then preyed on them. They were sex predators, and they preyed on the young women that came to work in the group homes. When Jean Vanier died in 2019, 28 women came forward to complain. L'Arche was allowed to investigate itself, and they wrote a 1,000-page report saying how sorry they were and how bad it was, but they had taken steps to ensure the safety of the incapable residents like Paul, and nothing actually happened to them at all. So when I complained to the Burnaby RCMP about the fraudulent and forged power of attorney, I know it was a forgery because I taught Paul to print. The only word that he could read or print, and that was his first name, Paul. It took me about a year as a little girl to teach him to do that. He was very low functioning. So when I went to the Burnaby RCMP, the group home's lawyer wrote me and said, "You'll never see your brother again." And they isolated and confined him. I tried through every legal system, legal procedure I could think of to free Paul so that he could have visits with me and visit me at my home here. And I was not successful. I went to the Supreme Court of Canada to restore his visits, was not successful. I went to the Supreme Court of Canada to reverse the decision appointing the evil nun in Ontario as Paul's guardian, and was not successful. So I'm posting these videos to bring your attention to the treatment of incapable adults in Canada. And so Paul had some kind of brain incident on April 13th. After he was no longer able to communicate by speech, they let me visit him, which reinforces my belief that, I'm a retired former federal prosecutor and then lawyer for 16 years. I was a family lawyer. So as soon as Paul was no longer able to speak, they allowed me to visit him for 10 minutes a day. The evil nun flew in 2 days later, and she put him in a room where she was alone with him in the room, and there was a door that closed, so the staff couldn't see what she was doing. I believe that for some reason at that time, the Burnaby RCMP contacted me on April 21st of 2024, and they told me they'd been ordered to reopen the investigation into the fraudulent and forged power of attorney. And I went to the court and tried to restore Paul's visits on that basis. When the nun found out I knew she was being investigated for the fraudulent and forged power of attorney, I believe that she ordered that Paul's treating physician kill him by removing, he had an oxygen mask. He had had some kind of brain incident. He had a wound that was oozing blood on the side of his head. They said he had a stroke. He may have been attacked. He could have been hit. I don't know. But as soon as the nun found out that I knew she was being investigated by the RCMP, she ordered the doctor to kill Paul. He had to die. He had to die quick. So he was wearing a ventilator, an oxygen mask that was removed, and I believe he was sedated to death. And I tried to bring to the attention of the head nurse that Paul appeared to be sedated to death, because at first he was quite bright and excited to see me. He grabbed my hand and squeezed it, wouldn't let it go. I said, Paul, it's Kathleen. He grabbed a huge coffee table book from my hands and turned the pages perfectly and looked at the pictures perfectly. He looked me in the eye. But as soon as the nun found out, within 24 hours of her finding out that I had been informed by the RCMP that she was being investigated, Paul was dead. And I could see what they were doing, and I complained to the nurse, and the nurse says, oh, we make our own observations. I complained to the nurse that Paul appeared to be over-sedated. He didn't need to be sedated. He didn't need painkillers. He was recovering from, they said, a stroke, and the treatment for stroke is very good these days. Very few people die of stroke now because they can, if they're treated, they can recover. But what they did instead is, I believe they gave him hydroxychloroquine or some kind of opioid, and they sedated him to death. As I said, within 24 hours of the nun finding out I knew she was being investigated, Paul was dead. So I've complained to the coroner, and the coroner said the doctor that actually sedated Paul to death had reported that he had died a natural death, and so they couldn't do anything. So I complained to the College of Physicians and Surgeons, and they assigned an investigator. And that investigator has been working for almost a year now. And he said it's a document intensive investigation. But the last I communicated with him, he told me they are still investigating it. And it's my understanding that the RCMP are waiting to hear what the opinion of the College of Physicians and Surgeons, because on the surface they made it look like it was a natural death by the death certificate, when in actuality Paul was struggling to recover. He wanted to recover. I could see, that little Paul loved life, and I could see the look on his face. He just wanted to live so bad. When he was confined and not allowed to visit me, he didn't know why they were doing that, and he thought maybe if he worked for me. He said, I'll work for you, Kathleen. We were allowed a 10-minute telephone call once a week. And he said, I'll work for you, Kathleen. And I regret now that I didn't do more, that I didn't throw a chair through a window or scream or do, I just trusted so much in the legal system, and that eventually somebody would listen and that he would be freed and that we could visit again. We were like Hansel and Gretel, and the nun was like the evil witch. But, I just regret so much that I didn't do more, that I just had tried harder to make them listen to me, and that I hadn't trusted the judicial system. So what happened is, after Paul died, then the nun sued me to have me declared a vexatious litigant. So she took away all of Paul's civil rights, all his charter rights in Canada, and then once he died, then she went after me to take away my civil rights. so that I she had me declared a vexatious litigant for trying to visit my little brother. And I had medical reports saying that it was in his best interest to visit with me, that there was nothing wrong with me, that I should be allowed to visit with him, and the evil New Democratic Party government, which are like worse than communists, worse than Soviet communists. They're evil. They're evil, and they're illegitimate as far as I'm concerned. It's an illegitimate government that was where you can't scrutinize the election votes because it was all done digitally and electronically for the first time in history. David Eby set it up so that just like this recent Liberal vote where Mark Carney was elected the head of the Liberal Party and is supposedly to be replacing Justin Trudeau, all of that was done electronically as well. So there's no way to scrutinize a ballot. I've been a ballot scrutineer, a voting place scrutineer my whole life, since I was 20 years old. And you can't do it anymore because they just feed the numbers into the black box of the computer and that's it. And we'll never have a democratically elected government again. So that's it for today. I miss Paul so much. I still record Star Trek and Batman on my a VCR or on my PVR. And when I see fun things to do, like the Festival du Bois in Coquitlam, I think, oh, that would be fun to do with Paul. And then I remember, no, Paul's dead. He died. He was killed. And one other thing I just wanted to mention is that I belong to a Canadian women lawyers group, and I just posted that Canada has killed 60,000, killed extrajudicially 60,000 Canadians in the last 10 years by lethal injection as medical assistance or medical care. And this other woman lawyer said, it's not an execution. And I thought, this is the whole thing about Canadians, is that we're so trusting of our government. The purpose of Canadian government is peace, order, and good government. But it isn't good government because they're killing innocent, vulnerable people at the rate of 20 per day. 5 out of every 100 deaths in Canada is caused by a regular doctor or nurse administering a lethal injection. There is no judicial oversight. When I did divorces for 16 years, and 50% of divorce applications are rejected as being irregular, and they have to be approved by judges. You can tell me that 60,000 people have been killed, and there wasn't one case where it was done irregularly or for an improper purpose? The whole concept of euthanasia is that it's the right to die, but everyone knows the right to die immediately becomes the duty to die. And veterans who asked for wheelchair ramps have been offered death. And the whole world, you don't see it. It's like having a wart on your face that you can't see. Canada doesn't see. The whole world looks at us with revulsion. We have the highest rate of euthanasia in the world. Of course it's convenient. But why haven't people been killing their sick and elderly and vulnerable citizens for the last 50,000 years? Because it destroys the fabric of society. The right to die becomes the duty to die. And sometimes with a disabled person, the only thing they have of value is their life. That little spark that somehow I believe God gave them. And the government wants to take away that one tiny little thing that they have that was given to them by God and not the government, and that's their life. Euthanasia has to stop in Canada, or we're going to be annexed by Donald Trump or someone else. And they're going to say, we lack the moral high ground to defend ourselves because we kill our most innocent and vulnerable at the rate of 20 a day, 5 out of every 100 deaths. extrajudicially. No police oversight. Notaries don't even have to look at these documents. All it takes is 2 signatures from any 2 medical practitioners, any 2 doctor and nurse who fancy themselves to be interested. They don't need to know the patient or the victim. There's no notary required and no lawyer required. My brother never had one moment with a lawyer. He was never allowed to consult with a lawyer over this fraudulent and forged power of attorney. Anyways, that's it for today. Take care, everyone. I love you all.